So welcome, as I say, to this Sustainability Spotlight session, the first of many, as we start to navigate towards COP26 in November. NatWest is the proud financial sponsor of this climate-based conference, and we want to make it more accessible for our local businesses to take just one change or one step closer to being more sustainable. So I have for you today a fantastic lineup of speakers who are super passionate about this and come from all different sectors. So I'm sure you will join me in welcoming them. Who am I and why am I running this event? Well, my name's Debbie Lewis. I'm the local enterprise manager at NatWest. I cover 4 counties, as stated there on the slide, and I am going to be bringing to you a number of events almost weekly through the summer around all different types of spotlights. So please do let me know what you'd like to see more of, and if you have got any absolutely amazing speakers that you'd like us to bring to the stage. Little bit of housekeeping. You'll notice that when you came into the event today, you entered on mute. That's just to stop any background noise or any Darth Vader breathing, but please don't stay muted. If you want to join the conversation, please do either raise a hand, use the chat function, or come off mute to ask a question. So don't be shy. We're quite an intimate group today, but as I say, we are recording this because I know there are a number of people who were really sad not to be able to join. So who have we got joining us today? This is our lineup of speakers. I am going to hand over in just a moment to Jane from the Green Business Network. Jane is based in Olney, so very local to us here in Milton Keynes, and she runs a membership organisation called the Green Business Network that she's going to talk about and focus on a key passion area of hers, as well as share her what one change can you make. We've got Will, who joins us from sunny Scotland, I believe, today, and is going to be dropping off the call slightly early because he's got a fantastic speaking opportunity with, did you say, The Guardian? Oh, you're on mute, Will.
I'm not to have any background noise.
Sorry.
Panel discussion on climate change. Very personal.
And I know that all of our speakers are doubled up on events today, so thank you so much for carving out the time to be with us. We've also got 2 fabulous ladies from our Accelerator programme. So Jo and Maddie, who have both been through the programme or are currently on programme, but also have a wealth of experience and knowledge in other roles and backgrounds within this arena. So I'm delighted to be bringing the 4 of them to talk to you today. So enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Jane. I'm going to be manning the chat, so please do pop any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll get to the good stuff. So Jane, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, I need to, yes, thank you. So I'm Jane Varley. I manage the Green Business Network. Can I have the next slide? Good. Right. Okay, we're a membership organisation and a charity. Our main aim really is to bring businesses together to share best practice and help each other in their environmental journey. We provide support to reduce environmental impacts of companies, and that can be by anything from introducing circular economy concepts into design, water consumption, reducing water consumption, eliminating waste, increasing biodiversity on industrial sites, but generally managing your environmental impacts and putting environmental considerations at the heart of your company's decision making. We also do quite a bit of legislation work with companies to actually help them to know what they ought to be doing so they don't get prosecuted or fined. Or actually, in fact, do environmental damage. So we've been doing this for more than 25 years now. We started out in Bedfordshire, but we actually work in Milton Keynes and in Northants as well. So our basic membership package is a sustainability seminar program, which offers virtual advice and which actually offers topics once a month that we meet up for. We have a formal speaker, and then we actually have a workshop at the end of it where people get to share what they've been doing in their best practice. We also offer virtual advice and support. We're working on an online member directory, and basically people get the opportunity to get together and share what they're doing with other businesses that are doing the same stuff. Right, our latest program is called Green Connectors. We've got a launch event for that on the 20th of May. It's a new network. It's a referral network for providers of green solutions. So anyone really who has a green product or a green service. And the idea is that people will meet once a month and they will learn how to cross-refer each other to other businesses who can provide green solutions. The end result hopefully will be that we'll build green supply chains, we'll have collaboration between green businesses, and there'll be more opportunity for green businesses to sell their products and services into businesses together. So that's our Green Connectors launch. We also have a 14,001 programme. Now this is very much aimed at SMEs who want to achieve ISO 14001. We're looking at going from 0 to being capable of implementing a system in 10 weeks. For those who don't know, ISO 14001 is an environmental management system standard, which is basically set up to help companies to manage their environmental impacts and improve on them. Benefits of this are essentially we take a very, very practical approach. We keep it at quite a basic level for SMEs, so we're not overcomplicating things. And essentially the whole thing is there to help companies to manage what they're doing, control and reduce their impacts. It also helps with tendering for contracts from government and larger companies. Okay, next slide, whoops. Okay.
You, Jane?
Sorry, I've done something to this. No.
We can still see you.
Can you see the slides?
We can, yes.
Okay, cool. Right, that's fine. Right, so basically, we also have a green support program for startups as well. And we're looking at a series of 5 sessions for companies so that they can actually embed sustainability right from the outset in their businesses. And this would be appropriate for companies who are actually just setting out, companies who are just a little way along their development journey, or companies who are, that's better, I can see again now, and those who actually are getting ready to scale up. Maybe they've been working from home, maybe they want to actually move into premises, so on and so forth. So that's for those type of companies. Again, that's something we're going to be launching within the next, I would say, few weeks. So if you want to visit our website in the next couple of weeks or so, then that will be up there. Okay, so my main passion and hatred at the same time is, my passion is to actually reduce waste, and I absolutely loathe this stuff. For me, waste is more than the stuff that you put in your bin or your skip. Waste can be waste transport, it can be waste resources, waste energy, water, and indeed the stuff that ends up in your bin or skip as well. Okay, the definition of waste basically is anything that doesn't make it to the final product or service. So you have an input to your process, which is all your raw materials and anything else that goes into making that product. You then have a process that you go through. Anything that comes out of that that isn't your final product is waste. This is also a linear activity or definition of waste. Now, waste at the moment we're looking at it, we're saying generally make, use and dispose. What we were actually trying to get to is quite a different definition, which is a circular economy definition, where we're looking at something where you make something, but you design in for the whole product and process the circularity of reuse of product, of reuse of materials. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we have a waste hierarchy. This is something you'll probably all be familiar with. It's basically reduce, reuse, recycle, energy recovery and disposal. So this is a traditional waste hierarchy. You'll notice that recycling, which everybody is incredibly keen on, and most people think that's all they need to do, is actually quite a low way down on this. You're far better off not producing the stuff in the first place. So prevention for me and for the network actually is the main focus, followed closely by minimisation or reuse. And actually we have moved on a little from the traditional waste hierarchy. We're now moving into sort of different areas, I think as a result of people being quite imaginative and absolutely brilliant. So can I have the next slide, please? Perfect. So what we've actually got now is basically the traditional waste hierarchy, where we're looking at preventing, reducing, preparing for reuse, so on and so forth. But we've also got this whole new area, essentially, that comes before we're going into recycling, that goes, we're going to refurbish this, we're going to upcycle it. So there's some absolutely brilliant products out there where people are actually taking a product and turning it into something entirely different, whereas it would have previously probably been thrown away. We're looking at repair, which is very much part of a circular economy model. We're looking at upgrading equipment. We've got one of the guys who's a member of the network who runs an IT company, actually, who never buys new kit. He just upgrades his old kit. People also are looking now far more frequently, due to the advent of, I think, social media and the auction sites, to sell stuff or donate it as a consequence of just having the access to being able to do that, which is also fantastic because you're actually keeping useful materials in circulation for an awful lot longer. It's not all going to landfill or being incinerated. So that's basically the waste hierarchy, which is effectively where you start from when you're looking at waste. Okay, right, so we've got essentially two types of waste when you're running a business. You've got that which you dispose of on site, which is process waste, recycling and general waste. So that would be stuff like maybe food waste, stuff that dust, for instance. I mean, everybody produces dust. It's the sort of thing you suck up into your vacuum cleaner. But there's also the waste that your product or service generates and passes on to others. And I think when you're designing a product, you need to be looking at both areas. Okay, so where to start? What's in your bin or your skip? Do you actually know? Big question this. I regularly go into companies and I say, well, okay, what's your biggest source of waste? And they haven't got a clue. Or we go out to their skips and we have a look in them and they actually really don't know what's in there or why it's in there. So this is really where you start in terms of physical waste reduction. You look at what's in there. Why is it in there? And my recommendation generally to all companies is look at what's in there and take it step by step. Take one product, one waste stream, and address that first. You don't have to do everything all at once, but actually if you do maybe one a week, one a month, you'll actually get to the point where you're reducing your waste overall and reaching a much, much lower quantity, which is actually better for the environment and it's better for your business. Because basically waste is costing you money. So why is waste reduction important? I think we've all seen the David Attenborough documentaries where we're looking at certainly packaging waste ending up in the oceans. We're also looking at waste energy, which is creating greenhouse gas emissions. We have a scarcity of resource, which will get much worse as the population expands. And we're also now starting to see growing pressure from stakeholders. Why is it important? Because essentially, why are we wasting stuff? It's anathema to me. It costs you money, it costs the environment, and it creates a terrible environment for natural creatures and for habitats. So we need to actually get our teeth into waste reduction sooner rather than later. Okay, so one of my favorite examples of looking at a product which starts out as this, which is basically, I mean, it's nice, it's ultra sensitive non-bio laundry liquid that has effectively been designed to not do damage to the environment. However, it comes in a massive plastic tub and it's actually full of water. So that could become something that is zero waste, because that packaging can be used to post it. It can be used, it can be composted or recycled very, very easily. And the product itself is actually also eco-friendly, and those sheets dissolve. You've got a product that goes out and dies, basically. It disappears, it does its job, and it's no longer there. The other product, however, is costly to ship. It uses a huge amount of water. You end up with a massive amount of plastic at the end of it. And looking at the cap, actually, part of that won't be recyclable anyway. So it's really considering waste, considering products, and considering how people use your products. So my top tip for today would be change your energy supplier. Is about the best thing you can do as a quick fix to reducing waste and combating climate change. If you need to contact me, I am infinitely contactable by email, by telephone, or you can visit our website. Thank you very much for listening.
Jane, thank you. And as we went along there, I had so many things that I wanted to either ask or add. I would love for everybody that is on the call with us, pop into the chat just an example of one thing that you think you could do to reduce waste, either personally or in your business. So while you're typing, I'm going to tell you that last year I made a decision for my husband. He drinks a lot of coffee from a chain. And I said to him, the impact that you are having on the environment is huge. Plus, it costs a fortune. We invested in a beans to cup machine and a reusable cup. He now takes his coffee to work in a reusable cup, but we also use the coffee grounds for composting. So it's that exactly what you were saying, Jane. For us, that was a no-brainer. So what's everybody putting in the chat? I know that Rosie, you're on the call. I know that you make depilatory hair removal product, and you do refilling for your therapist. So using the same pot, they refill the wax, which is amazing. What else have you guys got? Put it in the chat. Mitesh is saying, looking at getting started in composting. Oh, you've got to have your brown and your greens. I've been doing my research this year. Love a refill. So just keep it coming, reusing your water bottles, not buying continuously plastic water bottles. Also, are you aware of a company called TerraCycle who can take your crisp packets, send them back to the manufacturer and get money for local charities? But again, it's only selected crisp packets. They do the same for coffee pods. There is so much that you can do that has multiple benefit, but also reduces waste. So I would love for you to start thinking about what little things in your world can you do, turning off the tap in between brushing your teeth, only having a half bath instead of a full immersion bath, or even better still, a short shower. Mitesh, great one, turning down the heating. One of our office suggestions is that you reduce the temperature by 1 degree for a season, because that can make a profound impact. You reusing the packaging. I'm loving these little packaging things that you can wash down with water and they disintegrate. They're incredible. Okay, awesome. Keep sharing. Jane, thank you so much. Jane's contact details are on the slide there. If you'd like to get involved with any of her events or her network or the membership, please do contact Jane. And as those initiatives come through, Jane, for the ISO standards and the startups, please do let us know and we'll circulate those to our audience as well. So Jane's going to be hanging on for the Q&A section at the end of today's session. But I'm going to hand over to Will, who I know has got to shoot off at the end of his section today. So Will, thank you so much for joining us. Please give us an introduction. I know you're losing your voice, so as much as you can manage, of who you are, what you do, and why you're passionate about this area.
Hey everyone, really nice to meet you. My name is Will Richardson. I run a couple of companies, Green Element and Compare Your Footprints. We have been a B Corp since 2015, so I know a number of you know the B Corp network. We're one of the first B Corps in the UK, and firmly believe that driving your business down the purpose-driven model is the only way to actually have a sustainable business. We have a number of services. I don't really want to talk about those, but we basically do kind of classic consultancy. We have an online academy, we have an online community, Sustainability Solved. We've got online coaching. We have the software, the Compare Your Footprint, which helps you manage, understand, and benchmark your environmental footprint. It's free to anyone under £300,000 turnover. So if any of you fit into that category, please go to compareyourfootprint.com and you'll be able to carbon footprint your whole organization for scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. We were one of the first organizations to actually have the scope 3 emissions within the calculations, and you can actually automatically upload your data, and it's quite an innovative a new way of doing your carbon footprinting. We've actually had a podcast for the last 3 years, running one a week, highlighting different people in different organizations, trying to help disseminate what it is that we can do as business owners or people who work in organizations, and trying to just claw out, understand and learn from absolutely everyone. The biggest thing for me is really trying to help as many organizations as possible to be as green as possible. I've been doing this for coming up to 20 years now. And in the past, I would say I've been pushing water up a hill. I don't feel like that's happening now. I think we're in an amazing position to be able to just actually help organizations be environmental. And the fact that you guys are all on the Accelerator environmental program at NatWest really says it all. It just shows that, and I know what some of you do. I'm really open to understanding what more of you do, because it's us all just driving that passion, really trying to get us being more sustainable in society, and working with everyone is so important. I guess what would be quite good is to just, if I may, just quickly talk about SMEs. And we actually published a white paper on how green your SME is. I'll send a link around at the end. There are so many really good things that you're able to do. And I think, as before, switching your energy supply. The other thing to do is, I was actually on a discussion yesterday about pensions, and I know all of us have grand plans for our organizations, and some of us are employing people within them, and it is really important to pick that pension provider and possibly even asking people in your team what pensions they would like to pick, and picking an ethical pension provider, because there's so much stuff that you can be doing with your money, changing that bank account, making sure that you are, to be honest with you, with NatWest. NatWest is one of the best banks out there. I made a mistake a number of years about, I'm not going to say which bank, but I thought the most ethical bank. It was, but it certainly hasn't been able to scale with me. So therefore, we're actually having to move the majority of our business to NatWest. The other thing that I would love to be able to talk to you about is all this jargon around net zero, and people want to become positive. They want to be net positive. They want to be carbon negative. They want to be net zero by 2030. And all these are very lovely, lovely expressions, and they wonderful catchphrases for you to be able to sell more work. But what does it actually mean? What does the UN expect you to be getting to in line with that 1.5 degree increase? Maybe look at your science-based targets. Any organization can get their science-based targets. When we were only 4 people working from a satellite office, and most of us working from home, had our science-based targets verified when science-based targets first came out. And the reason why I did it was because I knew that it was possible for such small organizations to have your science-based targets verified. It's really important that we're all on this journey and not offsetting or considering that 95% of your reductions need to come from actual reductions rather than offsetting, according to the UN and the science-based targets consultations. So let's have a think about where we're trying to get to and what we're trying to achieve. And it's if we can all sit on the same page and actually reduce our emissions in line with that 1.5 degree centigrade, then that's really, really important. And maybe I could just finish up on a couple of points about some of the companies that we've worked for. So say Blossom and Brown Sycamore, which is a laundry firm. We've saved over 18,000 pounds of them in the first 2 years. You can see my voice is going quickly, actually, mate. And there's so much you can do as an organization, and it's not necessarily all about saving money. I can give you countless articles on where we've saved money, but it's actually about who works for organizations, and some of the services that you guys are offering will actually enhance other companies, and they will get their talents, keeping their talent in, being able to recruit better people, being able to tender for different jobs. For example, Jane was talking about ISO 14001. It's something that actually I started off in, and it's something we help organizations 14,001, but that helps organizations, the larger organizations, understand if the smaller ones are actually environmental. I just thank you all for doing what you're doing. Absolutely brilliant. And let's just try and get to that 1.5 degree and below, all of us working together. And if you know anyone that wants to come on the podcast, or if you think you'd be a great fit for the podcast, go to greenelement.co.uk/podcast. And I would love to have you on talking about what you're doing, talking about how you're going to change the world. Thank you.
Oh, Will, thank you so much. And I know you're really battling with your voice today, so thank you so much. And what a wonderful invitation for any of you who would really like to spread the message of what you are doing to spread awareness, really, and help people on their journey to being more sustainable. I think you're right, Will. You mentioned in there's a lot of catchphrases, there's a lot of greenwashing that goes on. So one of the things that really surprised me is you can use the term biodegradable, even though it might take a very long time, numbers of years, to naturally biodegrade. And actually we need education, we need better education. And Joe, I'm sure you're going to come on to this in your talk, but what's the need to knows and what's the good to knows? Because I think often there's a lot of misinformation out there. And yes, compostable is way better than biodegradable, but we're learning and we're evolving, because let's not forget that 10 years ago, none of us were separating our household waste. And hopefully now many of us are, but it's just taking it that next stage further. I've seen in the chat people have been mentioning about meat consumption as well. There's so many angles. Sorry, Will.
I was going to say that the Advertising Standards Association is starting to hold people accountable for some of the stuff that they're actually doing. Mark Carney, ironically, being one of them. And I think it's really important to note, if you want to say that you're net positive, you've really got to be able to back that up. And chucking money for £1 a tonne of carbon to a carbon offsetting company is not going to be able to justify that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, some of it will be people trying to bend a line to meet criteria. And for other people, it will simply be that they didn't know any better. They thought they were complying. So yeah, let's get that education spreading. Fantastic. So Will, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that you wanted to close on, or one thing that people can do to become slightly more environmentally friendly?
Measure your carbon footprint. It is the first thing that you should be doing, and then you'll be able to do that science-based target. But equally, look at the pensions. It's really powerful. Look at some of the stuff Richard Curtis is talking about at the moment with regards to pension providers, and possibly even signing up to this scheme that he's working on.
Lovely. Thanks, Will. Has anybody got any questions for Will? Feel free to come off of mute or to put your question in the chat, because Will not be here at the end of today's session for Q&A. Has anybody got a question?
That was easy. I've got offline.
Silence. All of our speakers have agreed to today's recording, so you'll be able to connect with them, come back to the recording to get their details. But I've also done a LinkedIn post. You'll be able to contact them through the LinkedIn connection on there. So Will, thank you. Feel free to drop off whenever you need, or stay with us as long as you can, whichever you are welcome. So we are going to move on to Joe Salter, founder and CEO of Where Does It Come From? Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Debbie. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay, I'm just going to talk. I haven't got any slides or anything. As Debbie says, I'm Joe Salter, and I run a social enterprise actually called Where Does It Come From? Now, as the name suggests, we are absolutely about transparency. I'm totally passionate about transparency, because if you don't know what you're doing, then you can't make any positive changes. Now, we're transparent in the way of what we focus on is clothing and textiles, primarily clothing, but we do a lot of textiles like bags and things like that as well. So really what I'm going to talk to you today is, as it's Earth Day, is earth-friendly clothing and textiles. So my story, bit of background, I had 15 years in a corporate career, which was around technology and innovation. But really all my life, I've had a huge passion for human rights and trade justice, and an ever-growing participation in climate activism. And for me, the two things sit together synergistically, because they both complement each other. You can't really have good environmental work without thinking about the people that are impacted, and if you're thinking about people, they have relationships with nature in everything that they do. So we can't have one without the other, in my view. And if you don't know what you're doing, as I said, you can't change it. So I set up Where Does It Come From in 2013. I've also done a bit of consulting around before that as well, on mainly on the fair trade side. Where Does It Come From, when I set it up, was really about clothing. I'd just become a mum myself, and I was trying to find the answers to the kind of the information about clothing I was putting on my young children, and I just couldn't find out that information. And it kind of chimed with, in my previous career, when we were running big marketing events, and I don't know if those of you with similar backgrounds, you were given a t-shirt to wear for a day with a slogan on, and at the end of that, nobody cared what happened to the t-shirt, so most of them used to wear it for doing the gardening or something like that. But I wanted to find out answers back then, and the only information that my business was interested in, the business I worked for, as so many others, was how much did it cost. They didn't care where it came from or what it was made of or anything like that. So I left that company and set up as a speaker, writer and consultant, and then I set up my own company in 2013, all about transparency. So our unique selling point is that everything we produce comes with a code on the label, so that customers can scan that in and find out the whole story behind everything that they do. So we can trace right back to the cotton farms, right back to where the original fibers come from, getting to know the people, getting to know the processes, the whole way through from inception to delivery, so to speak. So our key passions in Where Does It Come From are obviously traceability, but our stakeholders, we see that we have three. One is the people who make our clothing. So we work with social enterprises, cooperatives, artisan groups, to try and make sure that everybody has a livelihood that is supported. They can work with dignity, fair pay and safety. This week is also, as well as it being Earth Day today, it's Fashion Revolution Week, and Fashion Revolution is all about commemorating the 1,134 people who died in 2013 when their clothing factory collapsed on them, and 2,500 were also injured on that day. So again, that whole synergistic thing there. The planet is about one of our beneficiaries. Everything we do, I'm totally passionate about thinking about effects on the planet, and it's really interesting to see Jane's waste hierarchy, because that is something that we focus on really carefully in all of our productions. So we're using natural fibers, organic fibers, rain-fed fibers, three areas that we focus on. Any other materials like buttons, we look at wood, organic threads, all of those kinds of things. The dyes that we use, we try and use natural or azo-free. I won't go on and on with all the detail, but you can have a huge impact just by the choices that you're making right at the beginning of your project design, just as Jane was saying. Now, our final group of beneficiaries, I think sometimes get forgotten in all of this, and that is actually the end customer, because by putting the code on the label, we're sharing the story behind everything, which we believe really massively impacts people's mental health. Because if you know where things are coming from, you can connect with them much better. You can get an understanding, a relationship with the things that you're using in your life. And that makes us all happier, really, doesn't it? But knowing where things come from. And there's obviously other health benefits too. So briefly, in ethical fashion, in ethical clothing industry, there's a dilemma where people want to know who made their clothes, where were they made, were people treated fairly, was the planet harmed? And they're the kind of questions that we're trying to encourage people to ask and ourselves to answer. So for customers, how do they know? How do customers know the answers to these questions easily? Because the information is not that easy to find. I mean, the obvious way is to look at your labels, but I think you'll all agree that look at a clothing label, it doesn't tell you an awful lot about it really. You can see what fibers are in there, and you can see how you're supposed to look after it. But in a lot of cases, when it says things like made in the UK or made in somewhere, that's often the very last stage of the process. So one thing that really gets on my nerves is when you see something that says made in the UK, and it might be something made of cotton. And I'm sure, as you all know, cotton doesn't grow in the UK. So it's the very last stage of the process can be in a country. So you're not always getting transparent information on the labels. There's a lot more information that people should be getting before they choose to buy something. So the only thing we can really do is to look at things like accreditations. You can look at B Corp, as we're always talking about, and there's other ones, organic, social enterprise, fair trade. But one of the issues here is that smaller brands can't always get there straight away. So they might be doing fantastic things. You might not always find the accreditations, but it's a really good place to start. And the other things is, again, looking at the apps and the communities. A lot of this is a grassroots movement, so you can find out the information from yourself using apps, as have already been talked as well. So I would say always look for brands, build relationships with brands that fit your personal values, and then you won't go too far wrong. So finally, talking of the one change that I think it would be fantastic for people to make, as a bit of background, surprisingly, 60% of the clothing that we buy is made out of polyester. Polyester is basically plastic made of fossil fuels. It's non-biodegradable. And when you're making polyester and other plastic fabrics, loads of harmful chemicals are used in the production. And afterwards, when you wash them, they leach microplastics into our water, into our food supply. And even we found there's been microplastics in human placenta. So they're getting everywhere now. If you buy something and it's made of a mix of cotton and polyester, that still means that can't easily be recycled and won't biodegrade. So my action for you is, please choose natural fabrics. Look at that label. It will say made of cotton, hemp, bamboo, wool. If you can make it organic, even better. But basically, I would really urge you from today to choose natural fabrics when you're shopping. And that's me.
Jo, thank you so much. And I don't know whether this is true or a fallacy that I've picked up along the way. Isn't the fast fashion industry the single worst impact on environment in terms of sector?
I think that was one of those one of those statements that was made, and you'll now see that most people say it's one of the. Because, yeah, it's definitely up there. I would finger in the air top 10, but I think it's definitely a really serious issue. But for me, I'm really passionate about natural fabrics and natural fibers and compostable things and all of the lovely stuff we've heard about already today. And I actually do get angry with the huge amounts of plastic that's still virgin plastic being created and put into clothing. You're buying your jeans with stretch, we just take it for granted now, and we don't need to have that there.
No, exactly. There are so many modern alternatives now that are kinder. But if we as consumers are not pushing for change, change will be slower to happen, I'm sure. Jo, thank you so much. Please do hang around. We are going to come to Q&A at the end, so I would like to introduce our final speaker before we get to that Q&A, and this is Maddie Booth, who's coming with two hats on today. So she is the environmental or sustainability officer, I think I've written that wrong, apologies, at Solihull College and University Centre, but also the founder and CEO of skincare range Scrubby. So Maddie, welcome.
Thanks very much, Debbie, and thanks everyone for coming today. I know today has been a day that everybody's got lots of events to go to on Earth Day. So yeah, I'll do my kind of real job, as what my parents would probably call it, first. So I'm a sustainability officer / consultant at Solihull College and University Centre. Weirdly enough, I work for the European Union / the European Social Fund, but at the college. So it's a very strange relationship. But what I kind of do in that role is I work hand in hand with the college to help them become more sustainable, from waste to energy to procurement, anything like that. And I also work with small and medium-sized businesses to help them become more sustainable. So the kind of consultancy side is fully funded by the European Union, which is amazing. So I'm able to give local businesses in Birmingham, that's where I'm based, free consultancy, working from kind of a grassroots and small businesses sector, which is amazing and really, really interesting. I work with a huge variety, from drone specialists to hairdressers to cat parlors, which is very random, but it's really enjoyable. And then the other side is Scrubby. So this is kind of my passion. I started Scrubby in May 2020 last year, and that's when the business was incorporated, and that was in my final year of university. So I studied at the University of Warwick and graduated last July in Global Sustainable Development. So a degree that's very, very niche, and there's not many sustainability degrees across the UK. So I was very privileged to have had that opportunity. And that's kind of where sustainability for me at the age of 18, going to university, really began to become a huge part of my life. I'm from a very sustainable family. I grew up in a house that was completely off-grid, anything water, energy. So it's kind of been embedded through my blood through growing up, which has been amazing, and kind of why now it still runs through in both my jobs. So what Scrubby is, it is a sustainable skincare line, as Debbie mentioned, but what we do is we focus on upcycling. So as part of the waste hierarchy that Jane spoke about, we look at what can be reutilized in the food industry. So what we focused on at the moment is coffee grounds, as you mentioned, Debbie, can be used for a huge variety of things, including composting. But what we do is we turn it into cosmetic products. So our first product line that we've launched with is our coffee face scrubs, and all the rest of the ingredients are naturally produced ingredients. So like Jo, I'm a big fan of the natural world. And so, yeah, this is, I manufacture the product as well. And there's myself and another team member that are partnered on the business. So we work with 2 local cafes in Birmingham and basically take their leftover coffee at the end of the day and then repurpose it into our product. And that's kind of the focus for us. We want to provide the cosmetic industry with something that is A, sustainable and focused on the circular cosmetic industry, but B, also affordable. So for us, me starting it as a student in my final year of university, I was hugely passionate about natural products and how I could be more sustainable in my skincare routine, but I couldn't afford the kind of 50, 60 pounds ingredients, natural ingredient products. So that's when I started making my own products, from kind of different household ingredients. My mum hated it for years on end, but that's kind of where it started and has ended up at the moment now with our first product line being launched and our second product line already in the making, ready to be launched in July this year. So it's been kind of a strange process, and starting it in my final year of uni, and then graduating and kind of having these two jobs hand in hand. But it's been an amazing experience. I've met so many amazing sustainability people, and yeah, that's kind of a bit about Scrubby. And my one thing that I would definitely say is really, really important is food. 100%. That's been my passion for a long time. I've worked with Olio before, and Too Good To Go, and that's definitely where, as a personal change, I found I've been able to make the most impact from switching to a meat-based diet to a vegetarian diet. I'm slowly on the way to becoming vegan, but we're not quite there yet. That 100% is going to be the way that we'll be able to make a huge impact, because of just there's a huge variety of things. I think education on that topic itself is completely scary. I mean, watching things like Seaspiracy and David Attenborough's programs and Cowspiracy, definitely recommend all of those. And that has really kind of taught me that that's a huge impact we can have personally. Obviously, there's a huge variety of other things that we can do as well, but that's something that's not that difficult for us to do. We don't need meat to survive, and we have a lot of the population don't eat meat anyway, so that's amazing. Yeah, and somebody just said food waste, exactly. If you are staying, this is something I say to a lot of people that I work with, if you are staying on the meat diet, fine, that's absolutely up to you. I'm not going to try and change someone's opinion. But if you are wasting that meat, then that becomes a huge issue. And check where you're getting that meat from. So where does it come from in terms of meat as well? Making sure that you're utilizing that. So are you meal planning? Are you making sure that that meat is frozen if it's about to go out of date, anything like that? I think that's a really, really important point to make. Sorry, I waffled on a little bit there, but that makes sense.
Not at all, Maddie. All such fantastic information. Thank you so much. I realise we could talk about these subjects all day long. I was going to say till the cows come home, but it felt wrong after your last statement, Maddie. So what I would love to do, thank you all so much for sharing so much information today. I'd like to go to our guests. Please do either come off of mute or put your questions in the chat, or something you want to add that perhaps hasn't been covered yet today. What are we missing? What do you want more information on? Or how are you feeling? Are you all feeling shy today? Feel free to use the chat if you're not feeling brave.
Yeah, can I come in, Debbie?
Of course, Rosie.
Yeah, so I think as manufacturers, the responsibility goes down on us. And if we don't, I mean, I learned this quite early on when we were with the Body Shop. We're talking about 30 years. The first thing they imposed on us was environmental audit. So they would come in, separate our waste, decide where it should go, what goes where, and educate. I think it's about education. And if you don't educate yourself, you will not be able to pass it on. I also was brought up in Tanzania in a socialist, communist sort of way. So I absolutely value everything. I hate this throwaway society, and I'll make every effort to try and minimize my waste, and in the house as well as within the company. So we are a small company, but I think if you have that mentality in you, you will try and work around finding ways of, minimizing. But it's all about education. And the more we learn from each other, the more we can share.
Brilliant, Rosie. Thank you. I think as well as education, it's habit forming. So yes, in the hubs, we have recyclable stations for paper. But actually, did we need to print that in the first place? So we've become very used to such a convenience way of behaving socially. If we think back to 40 years ago, they would mend clothes, they would fix televisions, etc. Now we tend to replace it so easily because the cost of things have come down, but also we're used to this convenience culture. So yes, you're quite right. As manufacturers, there need to be more questions asked and more standards. And I love what Jane was talking about the ISO standards, is actually you might be able to win more big business by meeting those green credentials of the bigger purchasers. So that's an initiative. But what other incentives can we give to businesses to help them make it a priority? So I love that. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else got any comments or questions?
If I may, I'll dive in there with I would encourage everyone to, when you're buying your electronic gadgets, I mean that's my business, and I cringe at some of the things that my industry produces. And while some of them may be produced with supposedly goodwill, and people buy them supposedly with goodwill, the example I have is the energy monitors that were sent out a few years ago to hook into your smart meter and educate you how well you were using electricity. And the statistics are that some horrendously high proportion of those have never been plugged in. They went straight in the kitchen drawer, or they lasted a week or two, and then the novelty wore off. And we are turning out, the headline figure is supposedly 50 billion devices connected to the internet, and 40 billion of those are going to be e-waste. So please ask yourself whether that shiny gadget is really going to get used. And look for, and there's a big initiative at the moment around design for repairability. So many manufacturers now design in such a way that you can't take something apart. They're designed in such a way that you can't repair, and either recyclability, or there's a movement to make the internal elements of those electronic devices reusable in some other way. So yeah, that's my little bit.
Brilliant.
I think there was a European directive, Lawrence, that I think brought this into UK law before we left the EU, that actually required people to make things repairable, which is probably why you're seeing a sort of that type of initiative going forward now. And I'm pretty sure that still applies. So you're not allowed to place, certainly you couldn't export something to the EU unless it's capable of being repaired, if it's a consumer good.
And that's really interesting, Jane, because just last week I ordered a ceiling light for my office, and when it arrived, it had a note in it saying you cannot change the bulbs in this. They're LED lights, and when it's done, it's defunct. So I returned it because I couldn't believe that was the case. So it's still happening even now. Horrible. Yeah. So yes, Mitesh, washing machines is definitely one sector that need to be repairable for sure. And also,
and they are actually. Those are one of the products, those are covered. It is a whole raft of consumer goods. So it'll be things like washing machines, dishwashers, toasters, kettles, and all of those consumer goods that are covered by the legislation. So fingers crossed, they will actually start to come through.
Amazing. There should be a repair shop in every town. Rosie, that's what I was just about to say, is sometimes it's hard to find the people who are, happy to come and do it for you, or you need to go and do your research on YouTube or something similar to do it yourself. Has anybody got anything that they would like to refer back to from today's presentations, or any questions for our guests while they're still with us today?
I've got a question, if that's okay.
Go for it, Mitesh.
I think, like, talking about fast fashion, and then we just touched on electronics as well. Your thoughts on modern kind of social dynamics, especially like smartphones, and where every year there's a new device and it's got more features and it's more better and similar to like games consoles or TVs. And it's then very hard to then, use it for so many years because it, for example, take a smartphone, it loses its functionality. And especially if you're at a certain age, you want to keep up with the trends and, use certain technology. And a lot of times these days, they just become, even if you repaired it, it's just not good enough as what it used to be. And it generally just gets binned, or it does get recycled. But what are your thoughts on, how do we improve that from a, I guess, a psychological, social point of view, but also from the technology point of view as well? Because I don't know if a lot of the public know, you know, what would you do with that? What would you do with that device?
Great question. And the simplest way is when you upgrade, you can send it back to be recycled. But what they are doing with it, I'm not sure how transparent they are. Has anyone else? Lawrence, this is probably one for you in your sector.
Sorry, finding the key combination. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was just going to type something into the chat there that if nothing else, please choose your next phone to have a replaceable battery. So many, and I know the industry. They will come up with excuses as to why they're doing things for the good of the consumer. So yes, there will be the argument about waterproof. You want your phone to be waterproof and so on, and they'll use that as an excuse to keep you out of the battery. There's so many phones, the functionality degrades after a couple of years. So at least choose one if you can that you can replace the battery on. I've actually recently moved back to a pretty simple phone, simply because it will run the reduced version of Android. So it has less flashy apps. All of the variants of the apps that are appropriate for high-end phones, there are stripped down versions, and some more thought has been put into how the apps are written, and they can. And I'm hoping that phone is going to last me a good many years, rather simply because they're not trying to constantly push the envelope in performance.
Brilliant, thank you.
Can I just quickly mention Fairphone? I don't know if anyone else. So Maddie's going. Bye, Maddie. Fairphone's an organisation that basically you can take the back off and you can change all the components out and do all sorts of things with that. So I've had the one. This is a 2, and we've the company's recently bought a 3 as well. And as time goes on, the more and more of the components can be upgraded. So if something goes wrong with your battery or something, you can get a new one. So I'd recommend them. It's an Android phone.
Brilliant. So no Clubhouse for any of you guys at the moment.
Moral high ground, but no Clubhouse.
Just to round off the session, I'm conscious of time. I wanted just to let you know that we have just opened applications for a specialised climate accelerator. So we ran a pilot of this last year, and a couple of people who've been on the call today and a couple of our speakers were on that pilot. And the success of that has meant that we are now rolling it out nationally as its very own cohort. So we've mentioned B Corp today, and we've mentioned climate and sustainability. They are 2 of the new programs that NatWest is running a specialist cohort for. It starts in June, so you've got a little while between now and when it starts, but applications are open now and they will not be open for long. So if you would like access to 6 months of one-to-one coaching, specialist events, and a community like today of like-minded individuals, as long as your business has an angle or an interest in those areas, you can apply. It's completely free of charge, absolutely no catch, and it's fully funded by NatWest. The details, if you want to email me, my email is on there. I did put the link on my LinkedIn yesterday, but I'm more than happy to send it to you so that you don't have to go searching. Please do share with your networks as well, because you guys are all on today's event. So you're in my network, you're aware of what we're doing, but there will be far more people who are not aware that this completely free of charge support exists. And it would be wonderful to get even more innovation supported, leveraged, and visible to our communities to help drive change for the future. So I'd be really grateful if you would mention the event that you've been on today, share maybe some of your top tips, but also let people know that the Climate Accelerator is open. What's the point? Somebody did ask me once, what's the point of an accelerator? Well, it's to help you get from your A to your B that little bit faster than you would do if you did it alone. Essentially is how we help. So come and speak to me if you want some more information, but certainly do connect with our speakers from today's event, and really think about what else can you do that's not too taxing, not too expensive, to make one change. But also, please put it on your agenda. Meeting agendas, planning agendas, make climate and sustainability something that you think about continually to drive change. Has anybody got any closing comments for today?
I'll dive in. I'll just say, as an unprompted contribution, don't let what you think you might get from a bank accelerator course cloud your vision. That I've been on the program, it's absolutely fantastic. So do please. Obviously, yeah, the climate one is going to have a different focus, but yeah, it was really good.
Thanks, Lawrence. I really appreciate that. And the B Corp, we've got the B Corp cohort as well. It has originated in the USA. B Corp, work for good. It might be something that you're just interested in working towards or want to know more about. So please consider that as well. We are 3 minutes over, so I'm going to bring today's event to a close. But thank you again so much to Jane, to Joe, to Maddie, and to Will, and have an amazing rest of World Earth Day. Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Debbie.
Hi. I'm just
Hi,
waiting
could you-
for everyone to drop off, Jane. Bear with me one moment.
Okay, cool.